You can live your entire life thinking everything is fine, until you learn it never really was. Trista was a straight-A student. Smart, composed, accomplished. On paper, everything looked great, but behind the scenes, something was very wrong. For years, she had strange physical symptoms: chest pain, cramping, and a numbness she couldn't explain. Doctors chalked it up to anxiety and stress, and for a while that made sense. But then, her body shut down, her mind became a fog, and finally, she got an answer that no one expected. A parasite, an actual worm, had been slowly eating away at her brain. Yes, it sounds like science fiction, but it's real. Trista had unknowingly lived with a parasite that didn't just damage her physically. It rewired how she felt, remembered, and responded to the world. It made her forget what she should have remembered. It made her think she was fine when she wasn't. And perhaps most disturbingly, it made her unaware that she was even missing anything. Sometimes the brain doesn't just misinterpret reality, it actively hides it from you. Like a malfunctioning alarm system, Trista's body was trying to warn her for years, but her mind kept shutting it out. The parasite didn't just take memories or emotions, it took away her awareness of loss itself. And this happens in more ways than you think. Many people live with emotional numbness or unexplained symptoms, writing them off as just part of life. We're taught to push through, to ignore discomfort, to stay busy. But the mind and body are deeply connected, and symptoms, whether physical or emotional, are often the body's way of flagging something deeper. After the parasite was removed, Trista began to recover. But the recovery wasn't just medical. It was emotional, cognitive, and deeply personal. She had to relearn how to feel, to pay attention, to ask not just, what is wrong with me, but what have I been missing? Sometimes what's wrong isn't just the pain you feel, it's what you no longer even notice. And healing often begins not with treatment, but with recognition, awareness, a willingness to look closer. Trista's story is rare in its specifics, but not in its lesson. Your mind is always shaping your sense of reality. And sometimes the most important question to ask yourself isn't, what's the problem? But, what might I not be seeing? Most people assume they'd notice if something was seriously wrong. But that's the scary part. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes the changes are so slow, so quiet, you adjust without realizing it. That was Trista's reality for over a decade. What her story shows is a hidden truth about how the brain works. It can adapt to dysfunction so well that the dysfunction starts to feel normal. The human brain is built to protect us, but in doing so, it sometimes hides what we most need to see. Pain becomes background noise. Emotion becomes faint or flat. Life feels okay, not because it is, but because you've stopped expecting more. Mental health isn't just about how you feel. It's about what you're able to feel. It's about noticing, connecting, reacting. When you lose access to emotions, you don't just lose joy or sadness, you lose direction. You stop understanding what matters. This doesn't just apply to rare medical cases. People who've experienced long-term stress, emotional neglect, trauma, or chronic anxiety often show similar signs. They intellectualize their feelings, detach from discomfort, or operate on autopilot. Like Trista, they cope by overfunctioning, excelling outwardly while feeling less and less inside. The good news? Awareness can be rebuilt. Your nervous system can heal. Therapy, reflection, even simple practices like journaling, movement, or eye movement therapy can help reconnect parts of the brain that have gone offline. But it starts with asking a hard question. What have I stopped feeling? And why? Trista's healing began not when she got the parasite removed, but when she accepted that something had been taken from her, and that it mattered. That's when she stopped running from discomfort and started listening to it. That's something anyone can do, even without a diagnosis. Start by noticing the moments you feel nothing, when you should feel something. Start by questioning the parts of you that say, I'm fine, too quickly. That's not weakness. It's the first sign of waking up. There's something else Trista's story reveals, something many of us overlook. Healing doesn't just mean going back to how things were. Sometimes, it means becoming someone you've never been before. For most of her life, Trista's identity was shaped by the absence of certain experiences. She thought she was calm because she rarely got angry. She thought she was rational because she didn't cry. But that wasn't her personality. It was a side effect of disconnection. And once the parasite was gone, she had to face a difficult truth. The person she thought she was wasn't the full picture. This is more common than we realize. People often confuse emotional numbness with stability. But true emotional health isn't about staying steady. It's about being able to feel a full range of emotions and still function through them. not avoiding, not explaining away, not suppressing, just experiencing. One surprising insight here is that emotional sensitivity isn't a flaw. It's not a weakness or a problem to fix. It's information. It's your system working. In fact, when you numb sadness, you also numb joy. You can't selectively shut down emotion. You either feel or you don't. That's why many people who start therapy or recovery say something similar to what Trista experienced. Everything feels worse at first. Because for the first time, they're actually feeling it. And while that can be uncomfortable, it's also a sign of progress. It means the numbness is lifting. There's also a shift in responsibility that comes with healing. Before, it felt like the parasite was in control. After, it was Trista's job to rebuild, to choose discomfort over avoidance, to explore what she had missed, and to let herself care again. That's hard, but it's also freeing, because once you stop avoiding the truth of how you feel, you can finally do something about it. Healing is not passive. It doesn't come just from time, medicine, or positive thinking. It comes from deliberate effort, from paying attention again and again to what's real, even if it's hard. You don't need to have had a parasite to relate to Trista's experience. You just need to ask yourself, what have I gone numb to? What am I pretending doesn't matter? And what could change if I finally stopped ignoring it? After the parasite was gone, Trista faced something she never expected: fear. Not fear of relapse or symptoms, but fear of who she might become without the thing that had shaped so much of her life. This raises a difficult truth. Recovery isn't just about getting better. It's about redefining who you are, once survival is no longer your main goal. For Trista, the parasite wasn't just an illness. It had become a structure, a framework her mind used to interpret the world. Without it, she was left with questions most people avoid. What do I really want? What do I actually feel? Who am I, if I'm not just managing symptoms? This part of healing, rebuilding identity, is often the hardest. When you spend years adapting to pain, you get good at surviving. But survival mode doesn't teach you how to live. It doesn't teach you how to form close relationships, take risks, or feel joy without guilt. You have to learn that later, on purpose. One key insight here is that identity is not fixed. It's not something you find once and keep forever. It's something you build through action, by trying things, feeling things, getting it wrong, and trying again. For Trista, that meant slowly reconnecting with things she used to fake enthusiasm for: music, friendships, even small talk. Not because she had to, but because those things are part of being human. Growth after healing often feels awkward. You may feel behind. You may look around and wonder why others seem so comfortable being themselves while you're still figuring it out. But the truth is, most people are winging it too. The difference is, you're now doing it consciously. Trista started asking better questions. Not, how do I fix myself? But, what parts of me have never been given space to grow? She realized she didn't just lose memories and emotions. She lost time. And while she couldn't get it back, she could stop losing more of it. Recovery doesn't give you back the life you had. It gives you a chance to build the life you never got to have. You may not have gone through what Trista did, but the path is familiar. Numbness, realization, discomfort, growth. And eventually, if you stay with it, clarity. Not about everything, but about enough to keep moving forward. So if you're in the middle of that process, just remember, you don't have to know exactly who you are yet. You just have to keep choosing awareness over autopilot, truth over comfort, and curiosity over fear. That's how identity is rebuilt. That's how life starts to feel like yours again. As life slowly settled into a new rhythm, Trista found that recovery wasn't a destination. It was a practice. The symptoms were gone, but the patterns they left behind took longer to unwind. Getting better doesn't mean going back to how things were. It means creating a new normal, one choice at a time. And that includes how you relate to others. Trista started noticing how many of her relationships had been built during her emotionally numb years, when she didn't speak up, didn't ask for help, didn't expect much from anyone. Many of those relationships were built on her silence. And once she began speaking honestly, some of those relationships didn't last. It changes what you tolerate. Once you begin to feel again, really feel, you realize how much you used to ignore, excuse, or minimize. And that includes other people's behavior. Growth forces clarity. You stop pretending things are okay when they're not. You stop confusing being easygoing with being disconnected. And sometimes, that means letting go of roles you played just to be accepted. At the same time, healing can make space for something new. Connection that isn't based on performance or people-pleasing, but on real presence. Trista found this in therapy, in support groups, and slowly, in a few close relationships. For the first time, she could say what she felt and trust that it mattered. Long-term recovery is sustained not by willpower, but by structure. Trista learned to build habits that kept her grounded, daily check-ins with her emotions, regular therapy, exercise, routines that supported stability. Not because she was fragile, but because she was aware. Awareness is the ongoing skill that healing sharpens. You learn to catch old patterns sooner, to pause instead of react, to ask yourself, is this familiar because it's healthy, or just because it's what I've always known? And finally, meaning. After everything she'd lost and relearned, Trista began to ask why any of it had happened. Not in a cosmic or spiritual sense, but practically. What now? What do I do with all this insight? That's when she started writing. Not to explain, not to teach, but to explore. To put words to what had once been buried in silence. And that's another lesson from this stage of healing. Meaning isn't something you find. It's something you create through what you do next. If you've made it this far in your own journey, ask yourself, what do I want to do with what I've learned? It doesn't have to be big. It just has to be real. Because healing isn't the end of the story. It's where the real story finally begins. Eventually, Trista realized something she hadn't seen at the beginning. The hardest part of healing wasn't the pain, the therapy, or even the fear. It was learning how to live without constantly protecting herself. For years, she had been on high alert, even when she didn't know it. Every part of her life had been filtered through caution, through survival. Letting that go wasn't automatic. It was intentional. And it came with one last insight. Safety and freedom aren't the same thing. It's possible to be technically safe. No threat, no pain, no visible problem, and still feel trapped inside your own life. Because real freedom doesn't come just from eliminating danger. It comes from knowing yourself well enough to act on what you truly need. That was the final piece for Trista. Not just feeling her emotions, but trusting them. Not just having thoughts, but owning her perspective. Not just understanding the past, but choosing how to live differently now. She also learned that recovery doesn't mean you never struggle again. It means you're not confused when struggle shows up. You know what it is. You've seen it before. And more importantly, you know how to respond. That's why healing isn't about being fixed. It's about having a process, a way to check in with yourself, notice what's off, and get back to center. Some people do this with journaling, others with walks, with conversations, with quiet routines. The method doesn't matter as much as the consistency. The goal isn't to avoid ever getting lost again. The goal is to build a life where, even if you do get lost, you know how to find your way back. Trista's story isn't dramatic because of the parasite. It's powerful because of what came after, what she chose to do with the truth once she finally saw it. Most people never get that far. They settle into numbness. They adapt to dysfunction. They stop asking questions. But the truth is, you don't need a diagnosis to start paying attention. You just need to notice what feels off and take it seriously. You don't have to wait until everything breaks. So if you're reading this and something resonates, maybe you've gone numb. Maybe you've adjusted to discomfort for too long. Consider this your moment to stop, to listen, to check in. Because no one can recover your life for you. But you can start now. And the version of you on the other side of healing is worth meeting. Looking back, Trista didn't become a different person. She became more herself, not in a dramatic overnight way, but gradually through attention, discomfort, and the willingness to keep going even when things didn't make sense. That's something most people miss about recovery. It's not about transformation into something new. It's about uncovering what's always been underneath. Awareness is a lifelong responsibility. It's not something you achieve once and forget. It needs maintenance, not because you're broken, but because you're human. Life will always offer new pressures, new distractions, new reasons to disconnect. Staying aware, staying present, is a choice you make again and again. Trista learned to treat her emotions like signals, not problems. She stopped trying to explain them away. If something hurt, she paid attention. If something felt good, she let herself enjoy it. That small shift, feeling without immediately needing to fix, changed everything. And perhaps the most surprising insight? You don't need full clarity to move forward. Trista never got all her memories back. She never fully understood every reaction or feeling. But she stopped waiting for total understanding. Instead, she started living with partial clarity and full presence. That's more than enough. This story isn't just about an illness or even about recovery. It's about learning to live from the inside out. Most people live outwardly first, chasing achievement, validation, control. Trista had done that too. But the real shift happened when she started with what was actually going on inside her, and let that guide her decisions. So if you're reading this, and something inside you feels quiet, flat, or missing, it might be time to listen more closely. You don't need to have the right words for it. You just need to notice. Start with the small things. What do you feel when you wake up? What do you avoid? What makes you feel most alive? Even just a little. That's where it begins. Because healing is not about fixing everything. It's about becoming someone who doesn't look away anymore. Someone who notices, feels, cares, responds. And in the end, that's what Trista reclaimed. Not just her memories or emotions, but her capacity to live fully, honestly, and awake. That's what recovery really means.